Today, we are going to talk with Kim Nicol about using meditation and mindfulness to create abundance in our lives. Welcome to Richer Soul, your journey to a more purposeful, intentional, amazing life. Where are you going to go and how are you going to get there? Let's figure that out together. At the core is the financial well-being to do what you want, when you want, how you want. It's about personal freedom and abundance. And today we have Kim Nicol, who is an author, executive coach, and she teaches executive and entrepreneurs how to be more present, powerful, and mindful through meditation. Let's meet our guest. Today, we have Kim Nicol, who is a former lawyer, author, and a teacher of mindfulness for hustlers. Welcome to Richer Soul. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So, I would like to get my audience to know you a little bit better. You've had a pretty varied past of jobs and education. And I just love for you to kind of share your story of where you've been.
Yeah, I've been a lot of things. I've been a fitness instructor. I still teach yoga. I have been a lawyer. I have worked in publishing. I have worked in marketing, in the hospitality industry, and also in the startup space as well. About a decade ago, when I was working corporate, I was working for a very large publishing company in the legal field. I was introduced to this guy who became my meditation teacher. And it's important for me to note that I was not looking for a meditation teacher. I was happy with my life. Things were going great. But this friend of mine said, "Come on, Kim, you should check out this meditation class." And I live in San Francisco. I feel like it's a town that has a lot of meditation interested people. And when my friend told me about this, I said, "No, I'm really not into meditation. It seems kind of flaky. I've got like a life. I've got things to do. Why would I want to just sit and like contemplate the stars? Not into that. Thanks." So I actually pushed back for a while. And my friend kept saying, "No, you've got to try this. This guy's amazing. It's not what you think. It's really cool." So finally, one day I went to this meditation class. The thing that shocked me, first of all, was that we were sitting in chairs. I had this image in my mind that people who meditate have to sit on the floor and they have to have like special clothes or like candles or something. We just sat in chairs in a circle and we talked about life. We talked about our beliefs, our stories, our emotions, all of these invisible things that guide and shape our lives. And then he guided us through maybe a 20-minute meditation. Then we came out and then talked about the experience. When this happened, it completely changed what I thought meditation was all about. And I began to be curious because I began to see how it was actually very practical and very useful. If I understand myself better, then that also means that I can make different kinds of choices about my life and my work and my relationships. It just became this practice and a community that I would go to, once a week. I'd drop in for class. And I was practicing for several years, and I was beginning to notice how it was changing the way that I did my work at corporate. As I got promoted and I had more responsibility, my team grew, the product portfolio that I was in charge of grew. What I found was that meditation and mindfulness, and I'll talk about the difference between those two things, but the ability to be present and mindful at work completely changed my management style. I would say it made me a better manager. It made me better in dealing with people. It made me better in dealing with stress. It made me better in dealing with the uncertainty of the workplace. As a result, I began to really understand the practical value of this thing that before just made no sense to me. It's interesting because I had always thought, meditation is for people who are disconnected from the world, who are unplugged from a world. Like they go off to the mountaintop and they disappear for 10 years. And what I learned is that actually meditation is exactly an incredibly useful thing for people who are living in the world where things are busy and there are distractions and, everyone wants your time and everyone wants your attention. So it became a part of my life before it being of service in the professional world. And the thing that sort of switched from being in corporate and being a mindful manager to then leaving corporate and becoming this sort of mindfulness entrepreneur and writer and coach person was I had a series of personal losses in my life that really made me pause and reevaluate and understand how temporary life is. My aunt had died of cancer, and my stepdad was diagnosed with cancer, and my brother was hit by a car, and my stepdad and my brother are still alive, and they're doing quite well. But it's those kinds of moments, Rocky, where you just pause and say, wait a minute, life is really temporary, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, right. And what do I want to do with the time I have left? And what I kept coming back to was realizing I had plateaued in my career. I had plateaued at that company. And the work that I loved most was nurturing, supporting, and helping develop the people on my team. I realized I've lived a lot of life kind of in this traditional career trajectory. What would happen if I decided to live my life in a way that mattered to me? What if I decided to get curious and see what was possible? And even though it was a risk, I thought, you know what? This is a risk worth taking because I don't know how much time I get to have on the planet. Sometimes people just get swiped by a bus on their way to work and it's over for them. Thought, I want to give myself the chance to see what else is possible, to see what I can create, to see where I can really go with this. And that's when I decided I'm going to jump out of corporate. I'm going to dive into this new path, and I'm going to figure this out one step at a time as I go.
That's incredible. And I know from your background, you're the kind of person who doesn't have a problem making that kind of change because you came out of law school, right? And what happened when you left law school?
So when I left law school, I had worked for the public defender's office. I had externed in federal district court. So I was working in chambers with a federal district court judge. I had also studied international human rights in Geneva and Strasbourg, both at the UN and also at this institute around international human rights. I had this very broad perspective around what I wanted to do with law, and I was very interested both in litigation and also had an interest in helping humans, essentially. What I discovered along the way through law school was I realized the actual practice of being a lawyer didn't actually appeal to me all that much. A lot of people, I went to law school without a clear idea of what the actual work and life was like. And what I have appreciated since then is, sometimes you set a goal and then you focus and you work towards that goal. And by the time you get your goal, you have changed and you get this goal and you're like, but I actually don't want this anymore. And that was my story with law school. I wanted to become a lawyer. I didn't have a deep sense of what that meant. And by the time I finished law school and passed the bar, I realized, wow, this is actually not the thing that I want. This is not the path I want. So my first pivot was, and my first question was, well, then what else, what do I do? And that's when I found this really great job as an editor working for this legal publishing company, which is one of the top 2 companies in the US around that particular kind of work. I think the thing that law school helped me to see was I am very goal oriented and very driven, but I'm also too, what's the word? I want to say I care too much about what I want to adhere to an achievement, even if I don't want it anymore, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think for most people at that moment, there's probably a massive amount of emotion, part of it being fear. Like I just spent all this time getting a law degree, and part of it kind of being stuck on a path and saying, I'm going to pivot on this path. And that's both of those pivots were pretty big pivots.
I suppose, but it's also true. I was a dancer. So the idea of like the pivot had a very physical meaning for me. And so it was this idea of, okay, yeah, I've spent all this time and money to become a lawyer, and that's great. But what do I want to do now? And when I thought about going to work at a law firm, my heart just sank. And I thought, I don't think I want that. Like, what else is possible? So I felt fortunate that I found something else that was still relevant and adjacent to me. And I know a lot of people who sort of double down on the career that they don't really like, but they feel a lot of pressure to stay. And I will say that when I decided to leave corporate, that was maybe 10 years from law school to corporate to when I left. And it took me maybe 6 to 8 months of really wrestling with that choice, because I thought, what will my parents say? I'll probably say that, when I'm 80 years old, what would my parents say? And that question of, gosh, like, am I throwing away this career? Am I throwing away this education, all the time, all the money, all the prestige? Am I throwing it away? The thing that really helped me find peace around that was the idea of, look, when I was in it, I did it full on 100%. I did activities. I got the grades. I did externships. I studied international human rights at the UN in Switzerland. I went all in on it. Now, if what I'm deciding is it doesn't feel good, it's okay to update your dream. It's okay to choose something new. It was this really incredible reframe of, wow, it doesn't mean that I failed or I couldn't cut it. It just means I wanted something new now, and I'm giving myself permission to now bring those strengths in a new direction.
When you do these pivots, do you build up to it, or do you make a hard cut and say, okay, I'm going to quit this job and start a business?
It probably looks like a hard cut from the outside, but on the inside, it's like a slow groundswell. By the time that I left corporate, I had been, for many years, I had been teaching fitness classes. I had been very deep in the dance world, then very deep in the yoga world. I had studied body work and massage and Reiki and all these other healing arts just because I was interested in them, just because I found them fascinating and I wanted to learn about all of these things. So I've always had sort of these different parallel tracks of life simultaneously happening, because that is what's interesting to me. Like, instead of going out to happy hour, I'd rather go to a class and learn something new. Like, that's just what I'm into. By the time that I left corporate, I already had additional income coming in from my teaching. I was sort of teaching on the side just for fun. And it wasn't a lot of money, but it was a little bit. And it gave me the idea that, I also know how to make money outside of this. And it also gave me the experience of teaching in a group. Like, I was teaching in front of a group of people every week for years with a wireless mic strapped to my head, getting people excited about moving their bodies and motivating them to be fully into their workout. Everything I've learned along the way has helped inform and sort of add to my toolkit. And what's been interesting now is I'm learning how to apply those tools and those learnings in all these new ways. So from the outside, it probably looked like super dramatic. But from my side, there were a few years of things moving before it sort of surfaced and culminated to the point where somebody else could actually see something happening.
That's a key principle, is to always be learning and to always be moving forward. If you're intentional, and I don't know that you were intentional in all your different learnings, but the skill sets are transferable. So if you're out learning to speak, learning to talk, learning to sell, learning to motivate people, they all are skills that can transfer from one pivot to another pivot and help you. So it makes for a much easier swing.
Exactly. And I would say too, I mean, even beyond learning, which can sometimes feel very linear and like planned out, I would say just be curious. Always be curious. What are you interested in? What do you want to know about? What do you want to become more familiar with. Your curiosity will spark your growth and will spark your learning, even if it's something that you don't even realize you're learning. When I was teaching fitness classes, it was a while before I realized, oh, I'm also learning like what to do when how to improvise in speaking to a group when all of a sudden the power goes out, having to figure out how to teach a class without any music. Or I'm also learning not just body work, but I'm learning how to observe tension and stress and emotion in people. That's giving me insights that I didn't realize were available to me before. So what's cool is that when you're curious, you're going to be learning things that you don't even realize you're learning just because you're curious and interested in a thing.
That's amazing. And I'm guessing, so this is kind of a weird question, but do you watch much TV?
No, I don't.
And that's exactly what I thought. Instead of sitting there consuming content of TV, you're actually doing something. You're out learning, being curious. And that's one of the qualities of people who live a happy, abundant life, is that they're not just sitting there watching someone else. They're actually doing stuff.
This is what I've also noticed is that, because I have friends and family who watch TV. What I've begun to appreciate is that the choice of watching TV is the desire for both relaxation, the desire for someone just telling me a story. I just want to lose myself in a story. And I want to feel the emotional arc of the characters, whether it's action or horror or a mystery or love or humor. People are I think, very much drawn to TV because it gives them a space to access emotion in a way that they don't in their regular life. And if you're living and doing the kind of work that leaves you feeling really depleted or just kind of fried at the end of the day, you need something that's going to re-enliven and help you feel relaxed. For some people, like TV is the easy go-to, which is great. But it's good to know, what I really want is I want to feel relaxed. I want to feel emotion. I want to feel connected. I want to feel entertained. Then using your curiosity, you can find lots of different ways to do that. And sometimes some people love to cook. Like that for them is relaxing. It's fun. It's physical. It brings all of their creativity into play. So it doesn't always have to be doing a class. It can just be being engaged in some other part of your life.
Absolutely. Just find the things that you enjoy and then just continue to dig into them and enjoy them and share those talents.
Yeah.
So you talk about mindful and there's also meditation. What is the difference between these two words?
I love that you asked that question because the two words get put together a lot and it can be really confusing to know what the difference is. Here's how I think of it. Meditation is a word that describes a category of things in the same way that the word exercise is a word that describes a category of things. So if someone says, hey, do you exercise? And I say, yes, you actually don't know what that means. Maybe I go for a walk. Maybe I play soccer. Maybe I swim or go for a bike ride. You don't know what exercise means. Same with meditation. If I say, hey, Rocky, do you meditate? And you say, why, yes, I do. I don't actually know what that looks like for you. Maybe you do a walking meditation practice, or maybe you go to the Zen center near your house, or maybe you listen to an app and do a guided meditation, or maybe you have gone on a Vipassana retreat and you do a Vipassana style. So there are all these different styles and traditions and techniques in meditation. In the same way that with exercise, different styles, different techniques, different teachers and all that. The nice thing to remember is that if you decide to try a meditation class and you hate it, it doesn't mean that you're bad at it. It doesn't mean that meditation sucks for you. It just means it wasn't your style. In the same way, if I decide to exercise and someone's like, oh yeah, let's go for a jog, and it turns out I hate running, it doesn't mean that all exercise is not for me. And it also doesn't mean I'm bad at it. It just means hey, not my thing. Let's see what else is there. So meditation a word that describes a category of different practices, and it's all about testing and finding what works, nicely for you.
I think for a lot of people, I think they all have a preconception of what meditation is, and
I did.
So that, I guess the question is, so what's the outcome or the goal of meditation?
There are a few answers to that. And one of the answers is, as you meditate, you cultivate greater self-awareness and you cultivate more mindfulness. In the same way, so you can think of mindfulness as a quality, a way of being, in the same way that when you exercise, you do develop new strength and balance and range of motion in your body. When you meditate, you also cultivate different capacities within your mind and yourself. And one of those is mindfulness. And mindfulness we can describe as bringing your attention to the present moment with curiosity and kindness. Or the way you'll hear it often described is bringing your attention to the present moment non-judgmentally. Mindfulness is a way of being. And what that means is you can be very mindful when you're driving your car down the highway, but you would not want to meditate while you were driving your car. That would be a bad idea. Don't do that. You can be mindful in a meeting with your colleagues at work, but you probably wouldn't meditate when you were in a meeting with your colleagues at work. So meditation creates this ability to be present in the moment non-judgmentally. That is an incredibly useful way of being. To answer your question in another way, I think one of the best answers I ever heard about why meditate, what's the point, is from this teacher named Pema Chodron. She said, we meditate not to become good meditators. We meditate to become good at life. So as life offers obstacles, opportunities, challenges, heartache, joy, meditation allows you to meet the ever-changing landscape of life with greater skill, greater compassion, greater joy, and greater ability.
From a practical standpoint, what does, and I guess this isn't the right, I can't ask this question, what does meditation look like? Because we've already said it looks like a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, exercise means I'm going to move my body in some way and get stronger. So
yes.
What would be the same analogy? So for meditation, what am I kind of doing or trying to do that I get to this place?
The way I would answer that is I would say you're training your attention. You're being intentional about your attention. And so what that might look like, if you were coming to my class, the way I teach is we sit down in chairs, like I often will teach in companies and in corporate settings, but you sit in a chair because, sit in a way that's comfortable for your body. I'll have my students close their eyes because when your eyes are open, you're seeing things and your brain is having opinions about what you're seeing. What we want to do is reduce the visual stimulation, reduce the visual noise and input into the brain. That's why we close the eyes. We bring the body to stillness. You can just sit with your hands resting on your lap, palms down. We bring the body to stillness so that we can notice more keenly all of the different thoughts, sensations, and emotions that are currently happening within your experience. And the practice is the practice of noticing without having an opinion about what you're noticing. That's one of the hardest things because what we're doing is we're wanting to train your strength in being non-judgmental. The thing is when we're living in the world, being judgmental is useful. You need to have good judgment about things. You need to make decisions about things. Being judgmental is not a bad thing. It's not a wrong thing. It's actually a very useful way to be. The trouble comes is when we rely over much on that. when we tend to live from a place of judgment rather than recognizing it's a useful tool some of the time. So when we're practicing our meditation, we want to be in stillness so we can better observe our own thoughts, our own emotions, even our own physical sensations, maybe the desire to fidget or having a little itch or something. As you begin to notice them, you then begin to notice the space between the observation and where you are, and you get to choose how to relate to those things. That's where we start to cultivate a sense of kindness for your own experience, a sense of inclusion for everything you're experiencing. Even if what you notice is, well, I meditated, I was distracted, I was irritable, I was hungry, and then I fell asleep. The good news is that as long as you are observing those things and being kind with yourself, you're still getting all the points for meditating. It's not about, did you have this out-of-body experience where you're floating on a cloud feeling at one with the world? I mean, it's nice that happens, but it doesn't mean that you're doing a better job. It just means that, hey, what are you noticing about your experience? And can you stay with the observation without running down the path of having a story, an opinion, a future projection, or diving into the past about it?
That almost sounds a bit stoic.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned that. I'm familiar with the Stoics, and what I find fascinating is that everything that they're talking about lines up very neatly with the mindfulness domain, even though they use a different vocabulary around it. The two are not different things. They're just different lenses around the same thing.
And along those same lines, I look at most religious material kind of in the same way. It's just, they all kind of line up. It's just the story and the lens of how they look at things.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's interesting because in the same way that if you've ever met, sometimes you meet someone and they're really passionate about their exercise routine, you know, like CrossFit people, passionate about their thing, weightlifters, passionate, yoga people, everybody's passionate about the thing that they love. And it's the same with meditation and religion and philosophy, even though very much the essence of these things, you think, wow, these all really feel like they're kind of talking to the same thing. People can get focused and rigidified and defensive and assertive about their particular flavor of thing that they love. It's interesting to remember that part because you will meet in the meditation and mindfulness world, you will meet people that are so certain that their way is the correct, best, right way. And they'll get pushy about it and they'll get kind of mean about it. But you just need to remember, like, oh, right, like when people get excited about a thing, sometimes they get a little bit pushy, you know, just let it go.
And I think with that, I look at that and say, it is the best and right thing for you.
Yeah, exactly.
I might have a different best and right thing for me.
Exactly.
And it's I guess mindfulness is to just let go of that and say, hey, that's great. He found his thing. I'm going to figure out my thing. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's not. Maybe I can learn something but I don't need to convince him that his thing isn't the best thing for him. That's his worry. It's not my worry.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
What are some of the mistakes or misconceptions people have when they're getting started?
People want to know if it's working. And especially when I'm talking to lawyers are very competitive. So they always ask, how do I win? Like, how do I win at meditation? And how do I know if I'm doing it wrong? So here's the thing to remember. Remember that the goal and intention is to become more aware and observant of what you're experiencing. Sometimes people will meditate and they'll feel distracted, or they'll just like feel sleepy, or they just won't have a good time of it. They'll feel like they're doing it wrong. Sometimes people will say, well, I've been trying to meditate, but I always have all these thoughts. I can't clear my mind. And I'll say, that's fine. You're actually not supposed to clear your mind. It's a really not helpful instruction. So if you have thoughts and distractions, that's okay, because the intention is to notice what's there without pushing against it or clinging to it. Just observe how it moves and arises and fades away. So I like to tell people, when you have your meditation, be really kind to yourself. Be really kind with whatever your experience is, because often people will meditate, and really what they're doing is they're sitting judging themselves and criticizing themselves and being very unkind to themselves for like 10 minutes straight. And the voice inside their head is, oh no, I had a thought. Oh, why can't I do this? This should be easy. It looks like it's easier for that person. What's wrong with me? Like, if I just try harder, like, can I figure this out? All of a sudden, you're in a fight with yourself. And the intention of meditation is to find peace with yourself. And we do that by witnessing and noticing what's going on and being kind without having to push against it. So if you notice that you have a lot of thoughts, if you are wondering if you're too distracted to meditate or too fidgety, it's all okay. That's not a problem. The clearing your mind thing, people get hung up on all the time. They feel like they're not doing it right because they have thoughts. You're a human. You're going to have thoughts, probably until the day you die. It's fine. Having thoughts is not a problem. It's part of being a human. It's okay.
And so what, you just let the thoughts come and go? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's kind of like if you've ever watched the ocean or if you've ever watched clouds across the sky. I sometimes like to think about thoughts. It's kind of like weather. Your consciousness, your awareness is this clear blue sky. So there's always weather. Sometimes it's clear and nice, but there are clouds, there's a storm, there's wind. There's always stuff moving and happening across the sky. The practice is watching it and noticing it. And what that sounds on the inside is like, oh, how interesting. I'm totally having thoughts right now. I'm thinking a lot about that email I still have to send. How interesting. Oh yeah, and I'm thinking about what I have to do after this call. How interesting. Yep, like those are a whole bunch of thoughts I have right now. Does that make sense?
It does. Do you take notes at the moment?
Do I take notes? I don't like take physical notes, but it's like you're just noticing. You're like, oh, interesting. That's happening. That's happening. Oh, and now this is happening. Yep, that's what's happening.
Once you start to see these things happening, do you then, judgmental isn't the right word for what you do next. What would be the next step once I start to observe all these different thoughts?
Well, it depends. There are a lot of different approaches you can take. But just for example, if you were one of my students, what I would do is we've just paid attention to our different thoughts. We can bring that same level of awareness down into your emotional center, so around the heart. What emotions are you having? It's interesting how many people are disconnected both from their emotions, but also from their physical body. So the awareness of being a witness to your thoughts is one level. Bring that same awareness and witnessing to your emotions. Bring that same awareness and witnessing to your physical body. And you can bring that same awareness and witnessing to your breath. And every level, you're bringing that same intention. Let me notice and observe what's coming, what's going, what's arising, what's fading away. That's kind of like doing bicep curls, right? When your attention drifts, you bring it back. We're wanting to build that awareness and build that strength. There's always something changing. There's always something in flux. As we practice becoming aware of and seeing all of these levels, we become able to also gain information about what's going on inside yourself. After your meditation, you come out of it and you're like, wow, I didn't realize I'm still holding all this resentment about this person and this conversation we had. Or, wow, I didn't realize my body is really tired. I really, really need to get some sleep tonight. So the practice of sort of surveying and being present and aware of all these different layers of yourself, that within itself is a beautiful, elegant little practice to do.
And I'm sure the resentment level is high towards other people, especially at work. So when you're sitting here and you go, okay, I resent so-and-so because they don't do their work and I got to work extra. What do you do with that resentment?
Yeah, part of it is having space for it to be there. This is one of the hardest things. Okay, emotions are not a problem to be solved. And sometimes we treat emotions like a problem that needs a solution. The challenge and the invitation is when you notice an uncomfortable emotion, resentment, anger, anxiety, jealousy, fear, grief, the kinds of emotions we tend to either smush into a box and bury in the backyard like a dead body, or the kinds of emotions that we'd try to skip over. Oh, I'm not angry at all. Nope, I'm not angry. I'm not angry at all. Look at how big I'm smiling, right? When we encounter emotions that are uncomfortable, the invitation is to create more space for them, to become aware of the physical sensation around that emotion, and to hold it, to allow it, to bring your awareness to it with kindness and breath and ease. It's the kind of thing that if you're trying to understand intellectually why that's useful, it's very difficult to create a mental model and follow it to a solution. But what tends to happen in the lived experience is it allows that emotion to become less dense. It allows its space to actually be experienced and felt. And that means it's not going to get buried and show up as bitterness or numbness or passive aggressiveness. As you hold compassion and kindness for the part of you that is holding this difficult emotion, it also then creates more empathy and compassion that you can bring to other humans when they are having that emotion as well. And not just at work, but also in your family and also with your friends.
And I know just in coaching, a lot of people have quite a bit of fear and quite a bit of stress in their life. And a lot of times as we dig through the fears and we talk about them, we find that they're in a sense irrational, in the sense that the worst thing that can happen is really not that bad. And yet the fear kind of holds us back and prevents us from going forward. Do you have, I guess, conversations with yourself in that space over the fear and kind of talk?
No, I will say I never try to intellectually arm wrestle my fear into submission, because that is never as effective as creating space and allowing the power of it to unwind itself. And it's interesting because having been a lawyer and having spent a lot of time with very high intellect, high analytical people, the tendency is to try and use your intellect to wrestle and dominate your emotions. And that is not a sustainably useful path. That tends to be a path towards numbness and self-shaming and not actually addressing and holding the emotions with compassion, because that's where you have a classic, my mind and my heart are fighting. Instead, what I like to do is I like to engage and harness my mind, not from that level of question, but I'll say, okay, mind, your job right now is to just notice and be observant and help create space for what are the emotions that are here. What do the emotions want to say? What is it that's beneath all of this? Very often when something is just come to light and can be seen, the sting or the weight of it begins to dissipate. Especially if it's something really emotional, it'll often be released through laughter or through tears. Tears can sometimes be an expression of laughter as well, but it can be the sense of release. So there's always a physical component wrapped up with the emotion. So I like to get to emotion through the body, like what is the body feeling? And sometimes you can unwind the story. And if you see the story, then it removes the invisible power around it. But it's much more about creating space and honoring and allowing that emotion and the story to be seen, because of what it wants most is to be seen. And then once it's seen, you can do something with it.
in order to do this, can you do this on your own, or do you need someone to kind of help you guide you through these emotions and facing them?
The answer is both. Both are useful. You can absolutely do it on your own. I think, especially if you are a writer, if you are a journaler. For me, I'm a writer. I journal, and my journal often acts as the best listener in the world is my journal because I can just get the words and the stories and the feelings outside my head on paper, and I can see them there. What I'll say, the most powerful thing about having someone to help hold the space for you and to ask you questions and to witness you is two things. Number one, transformation wants a witness. The part of you that wants to change wants to be seen from before to after, and being witnessed as you are releasing the past and moving into your present and future. Having a witness, someone to see you and support you, is incredibly powerful. The other thing is that when you say words out loud, your physical body will respond in an undeniable way, and it makes it more visceral and it makes it more real. I've had so many experiences where someone begins to say the words of something, and I'll sort of push back and say, that doesn't feel true. That feels like you're telling me a story of what you think I want to hear. And they'll sort of pause and they'll think, well, the thing I really wanted to say, but felt kind of embarrassed to say, was XYZ. And as they start speaking the truth of what's inside themselves, their voice changes, their body changes. It becomes this fully embodied experience. And you can't get that just by thinking about it on your own, even just by journaling it. There's something so powerful about speaking and saying and feeling the words through your body, and also having someone to witness and accept and embrace you there.
I think in coaching, one of the things that's always done is to keep asking why, in a sense. Why do you feel that? Why is it that way? And just to kind of peeling the layers of the onion to get to the core. It sounds like very similar to what you're talking about.
In some respects, I think that's true. I think the multi-level whys can be a useful technique, but I often find that it can also derail people because it brings them into their head where they're trying to think of intellectual answers to things. So that's not a question series or lens that I tend to use very much. I tend to work much more through the full somatic holistic person. So awareness of body and asking questions very intuitively based on what they're sharing. A lot of it is sort of sensing and gathering clues from them, because so much of what I want to do, especially in my work, is bringing people out of their heads. Oh my gosh, I work with so many intelligent people and they live so much in their head. We are an embodied intelligence. Our intelligence is not residing between the ears under the cranium. It's all about what's going on in your body and your emotions. So for me, bringing people out of the intellect and helping them access more of the emotion, the deep desires, the irrational stuff is the most powerful, powerful stuff.
Do you see very often that people want one thing but say another?
I don't think that particular question comes up. I think when people come to me, the people who come to me, like, they're already really goal-oriented. They're all really highly accomplished. They're all very intelligent people. And they're all coming to me from a place that's actually like really good. Nobody comes to me in crisis. Nobody comes to me in a place of, this needs to, actually, I was going to say this needs to change or else. But usually there's not a sense of deep urgency around what they're wanting to change, but there is a sense of deep desire and deep passion. And they're like, okay, like, I need to be more present. I need to be more present as a father. I need to be more present as a wife. I need to be more comfortable in my own skin as I am rising through the ranks of this global organization. I am a founder. I'm hiring people. Everyone is looking to me. I've never felt so afraid of fucking up as when I had all this success. So it's a different kind of question. And I think people sometimes, they come with a sense of what they want, but they actually just are not sure how to get there. They know there's more in themselves, but they don't know how to surface it. That's where I come in and help to create the space and ask the questions that allow that which is within to surface naturally and organically through them.
What you're describing almost sounds like a little bit of fear in there coming to you. Well, not all of those situations, I guess some of them. They either fear they're not enough, or it just sounds like they're a little unsure of themselves. Like even though they're super successful, they doubt themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes it manifests as self-doubt, and sometimes it's just this awareness of, look, like I've never done this before, and I want to make sure that I have all the support that I need because my company is growing faster than I am. Running a company with 2 employees is different than running a company with 20 employees. Those are 2 different jobs, right? So what's really cool is the realization of, wow, all of this success is changing the landscape beneath my feet at such an incredible rate. I need to be able to grow and match the leader that the team needs to have as they're continuing to grow.
Okay. Yeah, and that's clearly a different issue. They're leaning in and they're moving forward, and I get it.
Yeah.
If people want to get started, first step is just to slow down and to just take a few moments to be quiet within yourself.
Yeah. The ROI on slow is highly, like if you take 5 minutes to slow down, the energy and the insight it gives you will save you easily 10x that in the course of your day or your week. What I love to recommend, like here's what the practice looks like. You sit down in a chair, you set a timer for 5 minutes, you close your eyes, and for those 5 minutes, just notice, like pretend you're just observing the world around you, but with your eyes closed. Just notice the sounds, notice your sensations, notice your thoughts, as though you're just making a list of, wow, look at that, I'm noticing that. Just do that for 5 minutes. That would be a beautiful beginning practice.
And that's something anyone can do anywhere they are. You don't need any equipment. You just need 5 minutes.
Right? Oh my gosh. And it's amazing because all of this stuff, science is continuing to show us evidence of why meditation and mindfulness are good for your body. It's good for your DNA. It's good for the little telomeres, the little casing around your DNA and your cells, and your stress and your longevity and your well-being. Science is now coming up with incredible evidence that is showing the value of this ancient practice. And what's amazing is that when you start practicing, it is free for the rest of your life. You don't need to buy the upgrade. There's no equipment to get. It's free. Do it. It makes you happy and healthy and just powerful in ways you cannot imagine until you get into it.
I talk to people about leaping with a parachute, which basically means you jump when you know you can't get hurt. This sounds like something that everyone can do, and the only way I see you getting hurt is if you fall asleep and fall off your chair. And the chances of that, use the couch. The reality is you can try this with no fear, and all you lose is 5 minutes. What you could gain is a lot more. And so there's no reason not to just go do it.
Yeah.
If that doesn't work, just remember that, like exercise, find another way to give yourself the space, the time to be comfortable in your own skin and to be able to do that.
Exactly. And, like for people who sit a lot anyways, and if the idea of more sitting is driving you bonkers, then what you can do for a walking meditation is, decide to go for a walk. It can be small, just walk around your block. The thing is when you walk, no phone, put your phone away, put it on silent, just look up, look at the skyline, look at the trees, look at the cars, look at the birds, look and notice what is in your environment right now. Just noticing and naming it. You can do that as a walking meditation as well.
Excellent. That's another great idea. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else that people should know?
Don't take it too seriously. People sometimes, when they start getting into meditation, they get so serious and severe, and they're like, I'm overcoming all of my human desires. And it's like, why? Being a human is awesome. Meditation should feel more alivening. It should help you feel more awake, more alive, more in your body, more turned on by life. Sometimes people forget that part and they just treat it like this sort of severe academic practice. Don't fall into that trap. Make sure that you're still enjoying it. Have fun with it. Let it feel good.
And just be in the moment. And for everyone, the experience is going to be different.
Yeah, because every moment is different. And you in every moment are different. It's going to be different always.
I think in today's world, there's just so many distractions and so much going on that it's nice to just sit and, if nothing else, be peaceful for a couple minutes with your own thoughts.
Yeah. It's kind of wild. You think it was a decade ago that the first iPhone came out. In the last 10 years, our attention has been fragmented and fractured into smaller and smaller pieces. Anything that helps your attention to be gathered as this whole calm thing again is really helpful, which I think is why meditation is becoming so popular again. There's this intuitive knowing that, wow, like my brain feels fried because my attention's been split ever since I woke up and started checking my messages on my phone. And meditation is a practice that does the exact opposite, which is about gathering your attention in one place and slowing everything down.
Do you do this at all as a morning routine? Instead
I do.
Just wake up and sit there in bed in the first 5 minutes and just kind of feel the morning?
If I'm feeling under the weather, I'll meditate in bed. But otherwise, I like to go and move into this more sunny room in the house, and I'll sit for 5 minutes in the morning. Some people like to meditate in the morning because it sort of sets their day in a nice way. Some people like to meditate at the end of the day because it helps them get ready for sleep and they have a better sleep. If you're a person whose mind is racing and you have a hard time calming your mind down to sleep, then meditation in the evening can be a really nice choice.
What about transitioning from work to home and family and kids?
Yeah. There's this one breathing practice called the after exhale, and I actually have a free audio on SoundCloud. We can get a link posted in the show notes or something for your listeners. It's this breathing practice where you bring your awareness to a particular point in your breath. And this woman who was a student of mine, worked on the 36th floor of this high-rise downtown. And she's like, oh, I now do that breathing practice, that breathing meditation in the elevator on the way down at the end of the day. So that helps her leave work behind and transition into letting it all go. She just do it in the elevator. And the other story that someone told me is they said, oh, I drive home and then I park my car in the garage, turn off the ignition, and then I'll just sit quietly for like 3 minutes before I go into the house to be mom and to be with my family. Then she said, but the only thing is my kids realized I was doing that. So they'd start coming into the garage as soon as they heard the car. So then she says, so I ended up parking like a block away from home so I could have 3 minutes, peaceful, quiet time before I come home. I thought that was brilliant because sometimes you just have to be real aggressive about claiming your space.
Absolutely. Think ahead, figure out the solution, and make it happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything else before we wrap up today?
Just that it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I love helping people get their practice off the ground because it makes such a big difference in both the quality of your life and quite likely the longevity of it as well.
Thank you for being here. If people would like to connect with you, where can they find you?
You can find me online, my website, kimnicol.com. You can find my books in the Amazon store, and I'm also really active on Facebook.
Okay, and it's Nicol is Nicol.
Correct.
Thanks for being here today. It was great chatting with you, and I think I'm going to go spend a couple of minutes being quiet.
Thanks for having me, Rocky. It was a pleasure.
So, a small assignment for today. Take 5 minutes and try this out. See what happens. It costs you nothing, and the reward can be really big. Thanks for listening, and enjoy your week.